It's late. Maybe 1:47 a.m. Maybe later. You're here again. Quiet room. Tired. Body busy mind. You've tried soft music. Cooler pillows, deep breaths. Still your thoughts tug at you. Some loud, some subtle. A mix of memory and restlessness, maybe a touch of sadness that arrived without a name. You're not alone, not in the way you think. Right now there are thousands, maybe millions of people like you, lying in the dark, not broken, not failing, just awake. So, let's not force sleep. Let's go somewhere else for a while. Somewhere stitched into time. Somewhere full of laces, silk bones, and quiet rules. Let's talk about corsets, not just as garments, but as tools used to shape not just bodies, but entire lives. For over 400 years, you open your eyes. You're in a dimly lit room. Wooden floors, a tall window, half covered in lace. The air smells faintly of lavender starch and dust. A dress lies folded on a chair, and hanging beside it, a corset, pale, structured, waiting. You're not wearing it yet, but you will be. A knock at the door. Someone enters. A maid, a sister, a mother. Whoever it is, they're carrying purpose in their hands. You raise your arms. The corset is wrapped around your body like an embrace that doesn't quite allow breathing. The laces are pulled and pulled and pulled. You hold on to the bedpost, or the frame of the mirror, or nothing at all. The room tilts a little, not from pain exactly, just pressure, like your lungs have been asked to make do with less. This is normal, expected, admired. The corset isn't punishment, not officially. It's protection, structure, identity. It says I am good. I am neat. I take up the right amount of space. Your waist is smaller now, your posture straighter. You can't slouch, even if you want to. You can't sigh, not deeply. This garment will guide everything you do today. How you walk, how you sit, how you eat, how you breathe. And people will admire it. They'll call it elegant, feminine, proper. But it's not just fashion. It's control. It's the slow daily training of a body into a shape that's acceptable. And over time, it becomes a training of the mind too. Because after enough years of tightness, of compression, of adapting, you stop asking whether it hurts. You just accept that it should. You sit down by the window, corset still snug. A sparrow sings outside. You take a small sip of tea, careful not to lean forward. Your ribs are braced. Your spine is locked. You are still. And this stillness, it looks like grace. But grace in this world is just discipline you've learned to make invisible. If this voice is helping you breathe a little easier, if it's keeping you company in this quiet hour, you're welcome to like or subscribe. Only if it adds comfort, no pressure. So, where are you right now? Lying on your back, one arm flung across your face, curled under a blanket, wishing your thoughts had an off switch, sitting upright because lying down feels too exposed. Whatever posture you've taken, it's perfect. Let your body be what it is. Let your breath deepen, soften, return to you. No laces, no shaping, no approval needed. Tonight we'll wander gently through the history of corsets, not to judge, not to shame, but to understand what happens when beauty becomes a blueprint and bodies are asked to obey. Let's begin. Hey guys, tonight we're tightening the laces, straightening the spine, and squeezing into a history that's more uncomfortable than it looks literally. We're going to slip into the strange, breathless world of corsets, those elegant cages that shaped women's bodies, minds, and movement for over 400 years. You'll be trussed up in linen and whalebone, forced to pretend you're comfortable, and maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why fainting couches were a thing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know your location and local time down in the comments, because history doesn't sleep, but you should. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in the year 1575, England. Your maid is already hovering her fingers, gripping a long pair of linen stays, freshly stiffened with something suspiciously fishy. You stretch cautiously because you know what's coming. It's corset time. Except they don't call it a corset yet. They call it a pair of bodies. Two panels of stiffened fabric, boned with whalebone, or sometimes reeds, stitched together and reinforced to keep your torso looking upright, noble, and most importantly, flat. The goal isn't to look seductive, it's to look controlled. Historians still argue whether the earliest corsets were born of fashion or function. Some say they were there to support the posture demanded by stiff, heavy gowns. Others believe it was more symbolic of physical embodiment of moral discipline. And in this world, physical discipline means literal restraint. Your maid wraps the stays around your torso and begins to lace. You exhale automatically. There's no room for full lungs here. With every tug, your body bends to expectation. You feel your ribs press inward, your spine stiffen, your movements narrow. You're a noble woman now, an elegant column of fabric, bone, and silence. And that silence, it's not just social, it's structural. Try speaking too loudly while laced, and you'll find yourself breathless halfway through a sentence, which is probably fine. Nobody really wants your opinion today anyway. The corset you wear is likely lined with linen or silk, embroidered if you're wealthy, and reinforced with boning, usually from baleen, the keratinous filter system of actual whales. Yes, your waistline is made possible by someone else's oceanic misfortune. But don't worry, by the 17th century, that practice will become normal. As you stand there trying not to faint before breakfast, your maid pulls the laces tighter, threading them like a violin string. Your waist contracts, your breath shortens, and your spine aligns in that perfect vertical that screams virtue. You're not just dressing your body, you're dressing your soul for judgment. There's something curiously ritualistic about it all. You wake, you wash, you tighten. You are built from the inside out, sculpted daily into submission. But there's also beauty in the precision, the smooth line under your gown, the way the corset lifts your bust, flattens your belly, elongates your shape into something not entirely natural, but undeniably admired. And it's not just aesthetics. Corsets communicate status. Only the wealthy can afford to be restricted this much to have the leisure time to sit properly, breathe delicately, and never bend at the waist. If you're out in the field hoeing potatoes, you're not wearing stays. But if you glide through candlelit halls while speaking in low tones about embroidery and court gossip, well, you better be laced. The corset is your passport into the world of respectability. To go unlaced is to go unmoored, improper, uncontrolled. A fringe theory whispered among laundresses says that if a woman spends too many hours unbound, her thoughts begin to wander into places they shouldn't. That the looseness of the body leads to looseness of the mind. Is it true? Of course not, but try going outside without one. Let's see how many polite glances you get. You glance in the mirror. Your body doesn't look like your own. Your waist is unnaturally narrow. Your back curves in a posture you didn't choose. Your breathing is shallow. Your shoulders are tight, and yet somehow you feel complete. You look right, even if you feel wrong. And this is the most brilliant part of it all. The corset doesn't just shape you, it convinces you that you were never meant to be any other way. There's a weight to it, literally and figuratively. The physical pressure of boning and lacing and stiffened seams, but also the emotional weight of knowing that your worth, your respectability, even your marriage prospects are tied directly to your ability to squeeze yourself into an impossible silhouette. As you take your first steps toward the dining hall, each movement is deliberate. You cannot slouch. You cannot twist. You cannot even take a full breath without lifting your whole chest. But you can look composed. And that here is everything. You pass another woman in the corridor. Her waist is smaller than yours, barely a handspan across. She smiles. You smile back. It's not a competition, but it is. Somewhere a young girl is being laced for the first time. She's crying. Not because it hurts, though it does, but because it feels foreign, like armor she hasn't earned. Her mother tells her she'll get used to it, that one day she'll feel naked without it. That comfort isn't the point. And you know she's right. You step into the dining room, breathless but poised. You sit carefully at the edge of the chair because corsets don't like slouching. Your waist curves forward while your spine remains rigid like a question mark with excellent posture. You sip water delicately, eat in tiny bites. Anything more would risk discomfort, indigestion, or worse, a visible swell in your abdomen. You feel dizzy, normal, elegant. You adjust a single lace at the back of your bodice and pretend it's not digging into your ribs. And as the candles flicker and the morning begins, you whisper to yourself the same words women will repeat for the next 400 years. This is just how it is. The year is now 1605, and your body doesn't belong to you. Not entirely. It belongs to fashion, to modesty, to your husband's family, your seamstress, your maid, your mother's reputation, and whatever public gaze is floating around the banquet hall tonight. You have been shaped literally into a silhouette that pleases everyone but your spine. This morning, your maid laced your corset tighter than usual. You didn't ask why. You already know. There's a guest at dinner tonight, a potential suitor, a man who, as rumor has it, once complimented a woman for fainting gracefully while eating a grape. So naturally, you're going to forget how to breathe by dessert. Corsets, by now, have evolved. They're no longer simple stays made from stiffened linen. No, now they've become architectural, built with more bones, stronger seams, higher bust lines. The ideal body has shifted. No longer just flat and long, it's now a dramatic contrast bust, forward hips, back waist, cinched like a wasp. Your body, in short, is a sculpture. And what's it sculpted from? You, of course. Your flesh, your ribs, your softest parts, pulled tight against channels of whale baleen or steel. Yes, steel. We've moved past the sea creatures and into full metallurgy. You are now wearing what might as well be a small fence under your gown. Historians still argue whether women enjoyed this. Some journals claim corsets gave them a sense of pride, of elegance. Others describe fainting, bruising, and organs slowly shifting like startled house guests. You think both are probably true. After all, you look stunning, and you haven't taken a deep breath since breakfast. You walk through the garden before the event. Slowly. The corset makes you glide, almost float. You can't run or slouch or twist, only drift. You pass another woman seated beneath a fig tree, her bodice unlaced slightly. She fans herself rapidly, muttering about heat and tight lacing. She's older, her waist still small. She has perfected the art of agony with a smile. You wonder briefly what your body would look like if you hadn't worn one of these nearly every day for years. Would your ribs expand? Would your waist soften? Would your back curve? Would your breath come easier? There's a fringe belief among court physicians that prolonged corset use actually changes the shape of a woman's skeleton. And they're not wrong. Bones bend when trained gently for long enough, which means this elegance of yours isn't just learned, it's carved permanently. Your maid once told you that the ideal silhouette can be traced with one hand from bust to hip, and you believed her. She demonstrated it once, her fingers moving like a paintbrush down your side over the firm lines of a dress you could barely exhale in. There, she said, that's the shape of grace. But now, as you stand at the edge of the parlor preparing to enter, you realize it's also the shape of silence. You can't laugh fully. You can't shout. You can't twist to look behind you without turning your whole body. Everything is forward, composed, narrow. Your gown this evening is velvet deep plum with embroidery across the bodice and a wide neckline that displays your collarbones like an exhibit. The corset underneath is invisible, yet it's the foundation of everything. Without it, the gown sags. Your posture falters. You look, God forbid, natural. You move into the room. All heads turn. You are exactly what they expect you to be. And yet, you think of the servant girl who once laced you in so tight you saw stars. She apologized afterward, said she was trying to match the silhouette of a French noblewoman in a woodcut. You laughed dizzy and told her it was fine. That pain was part of the process, that no one becomes beautiful by accident. She didn't smile. Historians like to say that corsets were symbols of discipline, of order, of civilization, triumphing over the wildness of the body. You believe them. You also believe that if you'd never worn one, you might feel less like a display and more like a person. But for now, you stand spine upright, hands folded just so, and breathe shallow, careful, almost invisible. And somewhere deep beneath velvet and boning and lace, your ribs whisper the same quiet phrase they've been whispering for years. Hold, just a little longer. The year is 1702, and you're no longer just laced. You're engineered. By now, the corset, now often called stays, is no longer simply an accessory or support garment. It is the very framework of your public self. And like any good framework, it is precise, rigid, and absolutely non-negotiable. You wake early, not because you want to, but because it takes 2 full servants to dress you. One to hold, one to pull. Your undergarments are already laid out. Chemise petticoats, stockings, garters. But at the center of it all is the corset, the silent, unyielding middle of your daily architecture. This morning's version is lined with silk and whale baleen, stiff and cool in your hands. It's longer now, designed not only to pinch the waist, but to flatten the stomach and lift the bust into an upright shelf-like display. The shape is geometric, almost surreal. You can't help but wonder if you're dressing for court or preparing to be installed in a gallery. The maid begins the process. She tightens the front stays first, then pulls the back laces slowly, rhythmically like tuning a harp. You resist the urge to exhale. There's a pattern to this now, a muscle memory. Tighten. Breathe shallow. Wait for the tension to settle. Then do it again. As the last pull secures the knot at your spine, you already feel the restriction, your torso locked into place, your ribs confined, your posture forced into the kind of elegance that says, I cannot be moved. Literally. Historians still debate whether this level of tight lacing was common or exaggerated by portraits and rumor. But in your life, it's not exaggerated. It's expectation. You will walk through halls with shoulders back, chin up, and lungs functioning at 60% capacity. And that's on a good day. You step carefully into your gown, heavy brocade, with a stiff stomacher that further presses your chest flat and forward. The gown attaches to the stays, almost like the clothes aren't just worn over the corset, but built from it. Without your stays, the gown would collapse. You would collapse. Everything depends on that central core of pressure. And here's the twist. You don't hate it. You look in the mirror and see not a victim, but a statue, a masterpiece of symmetry and control, a body no longer flesh, but form. The corset hasn't just trained your shape. It has trained your mind to associate stillness with strength. A servant brushes your hair back into a high chignon pins in a comb of jet and pearl, and steps back to admire the full picture. You can't look down without bending at the hips. You can't sit without perching like a bird. But you look perfect. There's a fringe theory among some Enlightenment philosophers that corsets were a tool of moral refinement, that the suppression of bodily chaos made room for mental clarity. You smile to yourself. You've never felt clearer than when completely immobilized. At breakfast, you eat very little, not because you're not hungry, though your appetite has grown modest, but because digestion in stays is something only the brave attempt. A few bites of bread, a soft, poached egg, that's all. Anything more, and your corset presses your stomach into rebellion. But you look fabulous doing it. As you walk through the estate gardens later that morning, your gait is narrow, precise. You cannot twist. You cannot run. You are held together like an architectural marvel, upright, compact designed. Passers-by bow. Other women glance. You pretend not to notice, but you do. You always do. And here lies the strangest truth in this rigid cage. You feel safe. There is a kind of calm in the compression. You don't slouch. You don't spill out. You are clean lines, order, elegance. Somewhere a girl is being laced for the first time today. She will cry. They always do. But by next month she will stand like you, and she will stop crying, because in this society, to be well corseted is to be well regarded. And eventually, even pain becomes polite. Still, you sometimes wonder what your body would be without it, what your breath would feel like, what the sky would look like if you could turn your head quickly enough to see it without rotating your entire torso. But those thoughts fade. The weight of the corset reminds you where you are, who you are, what is expected. You pause beneath a tree, feeling the sunlight trace your shoulder blades. The corset pinches a little where it meets your spine, but you don't flinch. Instead, you lift your chin, close your eyes, and simply exist for a moment as an exquisite arrangement of fabric and breath. It's now 1750, and corsets are no longer just garments. They are institutions. Entire economies are built on whalebone and waistlines. Corset makers, lace weavers, ironmongers, and dressmakers all depend on the architecture you strap to your torso every single morning. To be laced is not merely to be dressed, it is to be prepared for life. Today your corset arrives in a box. It's new, custom fitted, and embroidered in delicate silk thread. A gift from your mother-in-law which, depending on your relationship, is either generous or deeply passive-aggressive. You run your fingers over the boning channels, 12 in total, each one stiffened with perfectly carved boline. It smells faintly of starch and sea. This, you're told, is progress. Your maid helps you into it slowly, gently. This is not her first time. You've both performed this ritual enough times that you don't even speak during the lacing. Just soft inhales, occasional tugs, and a single nod when the tension feels just right. But what is just right anymore? You glance down, only to be reminded you can't. Your bust line now sits somewhere near your collarbone, and your ribs feel like folded paper. The goal today, a smooth, straight front and a cinched waistline that whispers of virtue, discipline, and marriageability. Because here's the real secret, corsets are no longer just shaping your body, they're shaping your future. You're being escorted to a luncheon this afternoon where 3 eligible men, each one pale powdered and barely taller than you, will politely pretend not to stare at your silhouette. But you know they will. Because in 1750, a woman's waistline is her calling card. Historians still argue whether this era was more about aesthetics or control. They point to art, to literature, to countless diaries in which women lament not the corsets themselves, but the consequences of not wearing them. I went unbound today and felt my soul unfasten. One noble woman writes, "Never again." You sip tea before leaving, though only 2 fingers worth, because anything more, and your organs will lodge a formal complaint. Then you step into your carriage slowly, sideways, knees together. Corsets don't bend after all. They pivot. On the way to the luncheon, you pass peasants in fields. They're not wearing stays, of course, just loose chemises and wrap skirts. They bend. They breathe. They move like wind. You try not to envy them. After all, they're not ladies. But the thought lingers. How free they look. When you arrive, you're announced by name and corset before anything else. You glide into the salon, the skirts of your gown swishing softly, the stomacher at your front pressed tight against your ribs. You don't sit yet. You perch. Corsets aren't made for lounging. They're made for being looked at. One of the gentlemen approaches. He bows. You curtsy, a calculated movement, perfected over years. Your body dips without folding. You smile with your lips only. That's the game. He compliments your embroidery. You say thank you. He mentions the grace of your posture. You pretend not to know why. But you do. The real credit goes to the garment wrapped so tightly around your ribs that your sighs come out in half beats. Later, a breeze picks up. You step outside, taking tiny breaths. A fellow lady leans over and whispers, "I heard someone fainted last week trying to sneeze." You nod, only mildly surprised. A tightly laced sneeze is a dangerous affair. More than one woman has passed out in church from a well-timed cough. There's a fringe belief passed among chambermaids that every corset keeps one secret trapped inside, that each stay holds a single breath you couldn't finish, or a scream you swallowed, or a laugh you had to stifle. You believe that. You wonder how many yours have stored over the years. That evening, back home, your maid unlaces you slowly, carefully, inch by inch. With each tug, your body exhales with relief, but the strangest part, you don't feel free. You feel exposed, loose, unformed. You touch your waist soft, relaxed yours again, and feel both grief and relief. The shape is gone, the outline erased. You slip into bed lying flat on your back, muscles still stiff from a day spent vertical. You wonder what your ribs would say if they could speak. Would they curse you, thank you, or ask for just one day off? And just before sleep takes you, you murmur a quiet promise one women have made for centuries. Tomorrow, I'll lace a little looser. You won't. But saying it helps. It's now 1837, and you wake up to a world ruled by Queen Victoria, and even more ruthlessly by fashion plates. They float in from Paris, from London, etched in sharp ink and pastel watercolor, all declaring one thing louder than the rest. The waist must disappear. Your corset has evolved again. It is longer, tighter, and paradoxically marketed as healthier. Yes, healthier. It's reinforced with cording, shaped with steel, and stitched with the finest couturier precision. And yet the air in your lungs is negotiable at best. Your maid brings it to you, wrapped in muslin. You touch the fabric. It's softer now, cotton sateen perhaps. But don't be fooled. The structure beneath could humble a cathedral. You feel a little tremor in your belly. It's not fear, it's memory. Your body knows what's coming. You slip into your chemise arms. Raise the neckline wide enough to accommodate breath you won't get later. Then she wraps the corset around you, like armor threading the laces through dozens of tiny eyelets up the back. The rhythm is practiced. Pull, pause, exhale, pull tighter. Your body resists as always, but not for long. You've been trained, conditioned, compressed. Today is not a day for loose lacing. You're hosting callers. The calling cards are already lined up in silver trays by the entrance. And when other women enter your salon, you know the first thing they'll look at isn't your gown, your hair, or your smile. It's your waist, measured not by tape, but by eye, by jealousy, by social arithmetic. Historians still argue whether women of this era truly tight-laced themselves to 18 inches or whether the dresses were just cleverly constructed. But you know the truth. It depends on the woman, her ambition, and her tolerance for feeling like her ribs are shaking hands behind her spine. You once went down to 17.5 inches for a portrait. You don't remember much of the day, except that someone asked you a question and you forgot how to speak. You smiled instead. It worked. There's a new concern now, though, one the papers whisper about the doctors warn against, but the seamstresses dismiss with a wave organ displacement. That's right. Your internal organs are playing musical chairs inside your body. The stomach shifts upward, the liver compresses, the intestines twist like poorly arranged garlands. But look at your silhouette. A perfect hourglass. Worth it. There's even a doctor's sketch, an anatomical drawing with tiny labeled parts that shows a corseted torso in cross-section. You saw it once and laughed, not because it wasn't accurate, but because it looked like a flower vase filled with sausage links. Still, you lace up, because rebellion comes in different forms. But so does conformity. And for now, you choose the latter. You choose to perform the role of the elegant, well-contained woman. It's what the world asks of you, and it's what your corset demands. You descend the stairs slowly, hands grazing the polished rail. Your skirts bloom beneath you, supported by layers of crinoline and petticoats. But it's your corset that gives them their launching pad. Without it, you'd be a marshmallow. With it, you're a sculpture. The guests arrive, hushed, perfumed, neatly gloved. Tea is poured. Conversation swirls. You smile, nod, reply in short sentences. Anything more, and you'll run out of breath. You know how to manage it by now. You've learned to time your words with your breathing. Speak on the inhale. Smile on the exhale. Don't laugh too hard. Don't yawn. Certainly don't eat anything denser than a biscuit. A young girl sits beside you, maybe 15. Her mother insists she begin wearing light stays. It's time, she says, sipping her tea. The girl looks at you nervously. You nod gently. She doesn't know yet how normal it will feel. How proud she'll be when her waist slips easily under 18 inches. How she'll learn to sit perfectly still, because stillness is easier than fighting the laces. Later, you return to your room. Your maid helps you undress. Each tug of the laces releases a breath you didn't know you were holding. When the corset comes off, your body expands slightly, not like a balloon, but like a secret it can finally tell. You touch your waist and feel the tenderness, a soft aching circle where the steel pressed too long. There's a fringe belief that the corset leaves behind a memory on the skin. That long after it's gone, the body still shapes itself into the space it was trained to occupy. You believe that. You can feel it now, even in this moment of freedom. Your torso still held upright, your breath still shallow. You lie down on the chaise and close your eyes. Your ribs creak faintly as they settle. You drift off, not dreaming of rebellion or revolution, but of ribbons, of hands lacing gently, of being bound and beautiful all at once. Because sometimes the cage becomes so familiar, you forget there was ever a door. By 1853, your corset is a constant companion, closer than your husband, more reliable than your best friend, and far more honest than your mirror. It holds you upright when your spirit cannot. It defines your silhouette, your status, your ability to be seen and admired and invited back. You've worn one every day for decades now. You could lace it yourself if needed, though you rarely do. It's muscle memory, the way your arms twist behind you, how your thumbs know exactly how much tension is too much, and how your breath shortens just enough to make room for beauty. This morning it's raining outside, a soft patter on the windows, but indoors, your corset waits beside the vanity like a quiet demand. Today's is beige with blue stitching, front fastening with metal busks. A modern convenience. You marvel at it sometimes, how technology and pain now come as a pair. Your maid helps you into it, and the ritual begins again. There's always a pause at the halfway mark, a silent moment where both of you acknowledge the pressure, the choice, the tradition, the tightening of both body and expectations. Then the laces continue. You remember when your niece visited from the countryside last month, 16 years old, and already complaining about her first pair of stays. She said it felt like being hugged too tightly by someone who didn't know when to let go. You laughed and told her that was the perfect description. Then you told her to get used to it. Historians still debate how much damage corsets did. Some argue the health concerns were exaggerated. No, your lungs didn't collapse, and your heart didn't literally shift to the side. Others cite letters from women who described nausea, fainting, deformed ribs, miscarriages. You read those stories and think, yes, probably. But also, no one ever made you wear it. You chose it over and over. And that's what makes it even more complex. You aren't just forced into this. You participate. You polish it. You care for it. You demand better, boning, softer lining, finer lace. You've stood still for fittings, cried at over-tightened seams, and smiled as strangers complimented your discipline. Because that's what they're really admiring, not your beauty, but your restraint. Today, you're attending an afternoon musicale, something like a quartet. But appearances are everything. The dress is ivory with a silk overlay. The corset beneath shapes the fabric like scaffolding beneath marble. Without it, you'd be mush in a gown. But with it, you are defined. At the concert, you sit on a narrow-backed chair, designed without sympathy. You angle your hips to avoid pinching your stomach, tilt your chin upward to help your lungs. Every breath is measured, every movement is curated. But your silhouette is flawless, and that's the only thing that matters. You exchange pleasantries with another woman wearing a corset so tight she can't reach for her teacup without help. She doesn't complain. Instead, she whispers, "It keeps me from slouching." You nod. You understand. Sometimes the corset feels like a spine borrowed from someone with more resolve. There's a fringe idea going around salons that corsets are symbolic of virtue, that a loose-laced woman is naturally a loose-moraled one. You find that laughable. You've met women with perfect posture and terrible manners, but still you lace up tight. You conform. You protect your name, your family, your image. And maybe your body suffers, but your reputation does not. When you return home, your back aches slightly. The corset hasn't hurt you today, but it's reminded you of your limits, your place, your expected outline. You unlace slowly. A sigh escapes before the garment even drops to the floor. Later, in your nightgown, you study yourself in the mirror. Your waist is red, gently indented like soft clay pressed by wire. The skin will recover. By morning, it always does. But somewhere deeper, there is a shift you can't see, a softness that hardens, a freedom that feels foreign now. There's a whisper among women of your age that once you've worn a corset long enough, you don't miss the tightness. You miss the shape. You miss feeling held. And lying in bed with your ribs slowly expanding, you wonder if that's true. If one day you'll stop reaching for it, not because you're free, but because you've forgotten what being unbound even means. The year is 1865, and today is not a day of leisure. You're preparing for a formal ball, one of the most important social events of the season, and that means tonight's corset is not merely about posture or polish. It is a declaration, a performance, a battlefield uniform in satin and steel. You awaken early. Your maid has already begun heating the flat irons for your hair, but your thoughts are elsewhere on the lavender corset hanging from your armoire door. It's your newest, imported from Paris, with decorative flossing in delicate patterns and reinforced with both whalebone and steel. Fashionable, deadly. You know it will hurt. But pain is a quiet companion now. It waits for you each morning, like a loyal dog, always at the edge of your bed, ready to follow you through every movement of the day. You undress, step into the chemise, and hold on to the edge of the wardrobe as the corset wraps around you like a whisper of control. It closes at the front, but the real tightening happens at the back. And it does tighten. You feel it immediately. Ribs, shifting belly, flattening shoulders, drawing back as if summoned by some invisible command. One pull, two, and then the long drag of the final tug that draws your breath up into your throat and pins it there like a brooch. Historians still argue whether women truly wanted to lace this tightly. Some claim it was coercion, social, or familial pressure. Others insist it was vanity. But what they forget is that fashion is never about just one thing. For you, it's about control, about status, about being seen correctly, about feeling your body match your intention. There's a fringe theory floating through women's circles that the tighter the corset, the more powerful the woman. That the act of controlling the body so precisely is a form of private strength. It's absurd. It's also oddly comforting. Your dress today is structured to emphasize the corseted shape nipped waist, rounded hips, curved bust. The bodice is sewn to follow every contour of your laced torso. It will not fit without the corset. That's not a metaphor. It literally won't zip. And you know this because you've tried once on a dare to wear it with looser stays. The result was a wrinkled mess and a personal crisis. The carriage ride to the venue is jostling. You hold yourself still. There's no room for slouching. The corset won't allow it. Instead, you sit like a statue, breath shallow, chin lifted. Your gloves are snug, your perfume subtle. Everything about you is arranged. At the ball, chandeliers glitter above a sea of lace and satin. You float across the floor like a swan, but only because your corset won't let you waddle. Your back is straight, your silhouette divine. Men bow, women smile. Everyone notices. But dancing, that's the real trick. You accept an invitation from a gentleman with carefully waxed mustaches. As the waltz begins, you move with practiced elegance, but inside your lungs are playing a dangerous game. Every spin presses your abdomen. Every dip threatens your balance. You've trained for this, of course. Women like you must train for this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, smile. Don't pant. Don't bend. Don't lose rhythm. After 3 dances, you excuse yourself. Your pulse is high, not from excitement, but from compression. You retreat to the powder room and lean lightly against a wall, pretending to adjust your gloves while your body begs for oxygen. There's another woman there. She's younger, flushed fingers trembling slightly. I think I'm going to faint, she whispers. You nod calm and tell her, lift your arms. It makes the breathing easier. She does. It works. She smiles weakly. Thank you. You've become a mentor of sorts to those just learning how to suffer elegantly. Later, back at home, you stand silently in your bedroom as your maid begins to undo the laces. The pressure releases like steam from a kettle. Each inch of slack feels like permission. Your shoulders drop. Your lungs unfurl. Your torso throbs, not from injury, but from sheer relief. And still, a strange emptiness follows. You touch your waist and feel for the shape that's no longer there. The curve you spent hours achieving has vanished in seconds. You slide into your nightgown and sit by the window, sipping water. Your body is sore, but your memory is triumphant. You were admired tonight. You were seen. You were right. There's a saying among your friends, a corset is like good manners. It only hurts when ignored. You smile at that. Maybe it's true. Or maybe it's just something you say to make it easier to put it back on tomorrow. It's 1874, and corsetry is no longer a fashion. It's an industry. You're now living in an age of mass production, mail-order catalogs, and something rather scandalous called tight-lacing clubs. Yes, they exist. And no, you're not a member. At least, not officially. You rise early, your bedroom dim with winter light. Today's corset has been laid out on the chaise, deep burgundy, with jet black lace trim cut in the latest curvaceous cuirass style. It extends lower than your previous ones, hugging your hips and shaping not just your waist, but the full outline of your torso. Fashion demands a smooth, elongated silhouette now. Curves, but only the correct ones. You step into it slowly, your chemise rustling faintly. The fabric is coutil thick and unyielding, stitched like armor. Steel bones run along every seam. Your maid threads the laces with the calm expertise of someone who has done this hundreds of times. You don't speak, you just nod. And then the pulling begins. By now, your body knows the rhythm. Inhale, exhale, inhale again. Hold. The pressure climbs like a slow tide, first around the waist, then pressing into the ribs, then up into the chest. Your heart beats louder. Your vision sparkles slightly at the edges. You say nothing, because you asked for this. And that's what makes it strange. Historians still argue whether women of your era truly tight-laced for beauty or were coerced by society's unforgiving standards. But for you and many others, it's both. You wear your corset not because you love pain, but because it shapes more than your figure. It shapes your identity. A fringe belief has emerged among young artists that corsets are symbolic shackles, evidence of patriarchal oppression. They sketch exaggerated caricatures of women bending and swooning. You've seen them. You rolled your eyes. These artists never wore one. They never understood the pride in control, the discipline of elegance. Today's event is a charity luncheon hosted by Lady Dunscombe. You know what to expect. Cucumber sandwiches, tepid tea, and endless glances at everyone's waistline. The unspoken contest of who laced the smallest. The winner isn't crowned, but everyone knows. You arrive wearing your corset pulled to 18 inches. It's tighter than usual, but tolerable. You move with practiced grace, shoulders, back neck long. Your gown flows like poured velvet. Heads turn. The hostess greets you with a kiss to the cheek and a subtle glance at your torso. You return the favor. This is how it's done, affection disguised as inspection. The luncheon drags on. Conversation is light, but your breath grows heavier. The sandwiches feel like rocks in your stomach. You sip tea and smile. You excuse yourself after an hour to walk the gardens and loosen your stays slightly, just one eyelet. No one notices. You hope. There's a young woman in the garden, pacing slowly. She's panting. I shouldn't have eaten, she mutters mostly to herself. You approach gently, offer her a seat. First tight lace, you ask. She nods. It's like wearing your nerves on the outside, she whispers. You smile. Exactly. She asks if it ever gets easier. You pause before replying. Not easier, you say, but more familiar. Back home, you let the maid remove your corset in near silence. The room feels warmer without it. Your ribs feel exposed, vulnerable, floating. You place the corset gently back on its hanger. The waist curves like a question mark. You look at it longer than usual. There's a quiet superstition among your friends that each corset you own knows a different version of you. The crimson one, confident. The ivory demure. The black unbothered by rules. And this one, the burgundy, it knows your ambition. It remembers every luncheon, every judgment, every breath you sacrificed to be seen a certain way. You lie in bed, later, wrapped in soft linen, and feel your body settle. Your spine aches, your hips throb, but your heart is strangely steady. Because tomorrow you'll lace up again, not for fashion, not for men, not for society, but for the person you've trained yourself to become one breathless inch at a time. It's 1881 now, and corsets have begun to whisper their defiance into the seams. You don't notice it at first, it's subtle. A gentler slope at the waist. A new ad promising ventilated support. Words like rational and comfort are creeping into fashion columns. And behind closed doors, some women are starting to question. But not you. Not yet. You're preparing for another formal event, this time a photographic portrait, a lasting one, a legacy frozen in silver and sepia. And so your corset must be perfect. Today's is a gray satin with embroidered gussets and straight steel busks. The waist, 17 3/4 inches. Tighter than usual, yes, but necessary. Cameras don't flatter. They record. They remember. And you intend to be remembered correctly. As your maid begins the lacing, you close your eyes, not in pain, but in ritual. Each tug is familiar, each cinch predictable. The corset wraps around your midsection like a memory. It knows where to press. You know how to yield. Historians still debate whether corsets were responsible for deformities or simply exaggerated by moral reformers. Some point to medical sketches, displaced organs, fractured ribs, digestive issues. Others say it's nonsense, no different from modern shoes or shapewear. But you know your own aches. You've counted the bruises. You've felt the breathlessness during long carriages or late dances. And yet, you never stopped. Because the corset doesn't just restrict, it defines. Not just your figure, but your control over it. Its structure in a world of chaos. Its silence where your voice may not be welcome. Today's portrait will be taken by a man named Mr. Holbrook. He's known for capturing nobility in their best light. You arrive early, spine straight, waistline precise. He nods approvingly. Splendid figure, he murmurs. You smile, slightly numb. You pose, standing left hand, resting on a velvet chair, right hand gently at your side. You cannot move, not just because of the exposure time, but because the corset holds you still. Breathing is shallow. Posing is pain. But the silhouette is flawless. Behind you, a young assistant watches with wide eyes. She's not corseted, just a working girl. She whispers to the other assistant, "How do they breathe?" You hear her. You say nothing, because you do breathe, just not all the way. After the sitting, Mr. Holbrook shows you the plate. The image is crisp. Your waist tapers like the stem of a wine glass. Your posture is impeccable. You've been immortalized, not as you are, but as society expects you to be. That evening, as the corset comes off, your body complains, your back throbs, your ribs ache. You run a fingertip along the red marks on your abdomen, and yet, in the mirror, your reflection still holds the pose. Shoulders back, chin lifted. You're still performing, even alone. There's a quiet rebellion rising now. The Rational Dress Society in London is hosting meetings. They say corsets damage women's health limit movement, restrict freedom. They propose alternatives, reformed stays, divided skirts. The papers call them radicals. You call them interesting. You meet a friend for tea the next day, and she arrives uncorseted. She wears a loose-cut bodice, her waist soft, her shoulders relaxed. You're scandalized, and also curious. Doesn't it feel wrong, you ask? She shrugs. It feels real. You touch your own waist beneath the table. It's laced to 18 inches. It feels defined. There's a growing idea of fringe, but catching on that corsets are the reason women faint, that they crush ambition along with organs. You disagree. Your corset has never stopped you from managing a household, planning events, shaping reputation. If anything, it helped. Still, that night before undressing, you linger longer than usual. You look at the corset hanging off the bedpost. Elegant, severe. You wonder who you are without it. And you don't have an answer. Because for decades now, your body has not been just yours. It has been corseted, curated, controlled. A canvas, stretched, tight, and the idea of softness, of roundness, of motion, feels more dangerous than the steel ever did. So you sigh, slip under the covers, and plan to lace up again tomorrow. Not because you must, but because without it, you're not yet sure who you'd be. The year is 1893, and something unusual has begun to stir, not just in fashion magazines or dressmakers' salons, but in you. Today you wake up late. The sunlight slants through the lace curtains in your bedroom, warm and slow, the way a Sunday ought to feel. You sit on the edge of the bed and press your hand to your waist, soft, unshaped, unclaimed, for the first time in weeks. The corset hangs untouched across the back of your chair. You don't reach for it. Instead, you open your wardrobe and pull out a looser tea gown, one of those scandalously uncorseted styles meant to be worn only in private, behind closed doors, among women. But today, you choose it for breakfast. You even wear it in front of the housemaid. Her eyebrows lift just slightly. No words are exchanged. You both understand the silent shift taking place. As you sit with your coffee and read the morning paper, you breathe deeply, fully, without the quiet tug of laces reminding you to stay composed. It's unfamiliar and disorienting. Historians will later argue about this exact decade. Some will say it marked the beginning of the end for corsetry citing the rise of reform dress movements and the influence of physical culture. Others will argue that corsets simply evolved adapting to newer silhouettes rather than disappearing altogether. But inside your rib cage, a very different truth is unfolding. Your body is starting to remember itself. You're not abandoning corsets, not yet, but they're no longer default. They've become optional, occasional, reserved for formal dinners, public appearances, and portraits, not for reading in the garden or walking to the post office. There's a fringe theory shared quietly among your milliner's younger apprentices that corsets are like training wheels for femininity, necessary perhaps, but temporary. You find that phrasing both cheeky and strangely hopeful. Later that week, you're invited to a small outdoor gathering. You arrive in a soft flowing gown, waist unbound. A few women glance twice, but say nothing. One of them, a widow in her 50s, leans close and whispers, "I haven't laced in 3 months. Don't tell my daughter." You smile. A silent sisterhood. And yet, at the same gathering, a younger woman, barely 20, arrives in a dramatic, tightly laced ensemble with flared skirts and a waist that looks impossible. She is stunning. She moves like a swan on rails. People turn to watch her pass. You feel a flicker of something sharp, admiration, envy, memory. Later at home, you find yourself holding your corset again, not wearing it, just tracing the fabric. The satin is familiar, the boning unforgiving. You wonder if you could ever return to it fully, or if the door you've cracked open toward comfort, softness, autonomy can even be closed again. That evening, you write a letter to an old friend. She lives in Paris now and has joined the Dress Reform Society. You ask her what it feels like to be free every day, to move without structure, to be without support. You fold the letter, slowly press it with lavender, and feel a quiet tremble in your fingers. Not fear, not exactly, but change. The corset still waits for you, ever loyal, hanging from the armoire. And tomorrow, perhaps, you'll wear it again for the opera. But not tonight. Tonight you're yourself, unlaced, unsure, and somehow finally breathing. It's the dawn of a new century, 1901, and as Queen Victoria is laid to rest, so too, it seems, is the absolute reign of the corset. But not all at once. You still see them everywhere. They still shape gowns, still define silhouettes, still whisper of discipline and decorum. But there's a shift now, a loosening at the seams. And today you're going shopping, not just for gloves or lace, but for something different, a new kind of corset, one not made for rigidity, but for mobility. The store is bright busy, bustling with women of all ages. Young girls giggle in the corner, while an older matron argues with a clerk over busk length. And, at the center of it all, a new display, the S-bend corset, modern support for the modern woman. It looks alien. Instead of cinching the waist in a gentle hourglass, it juts the hips back and the chest forward, creating a kind of swooping S curve. Supposedly, it frees the stomach and promotes better breathing. You're skeptical. Historians still argue whether this new design was actually healthier or just a marketing gimmick. Some medical journals praised it. Others condemned it as even worse for the spine. But you, standing in front of the mirror, don't care about studies. You care about how it feels. You try one on. The fit is strange. Your waist is still shaped, but the pressure's distributed differently. You can breathe deeper, but you walk like a sailboat caught in a breeze. Your posture feels artificial. Elegant, yes, but contrived. A younger woman near you twirls in her new corset. "Don't you love it?" she chirps. "So progressive." You nod politely, but don't answer. Progressive is relative after all. That evening, you walk home without buying one. At dinner, the conversation turns, as it often does now, to women's rights. Your niece, recently back from university, declares that corsets are tools of oppression. "We're literally binding ourselves for approval," she says, cheeks flushed with conviction. You smile. Approval has always come at a price. "But it shouldn't," she fires back. She has a point, one you used to push away. You excuse yourself early. In your bedroom, the older corsets hang quietly, like memories. Some frayed, some pristine. Each holds a version of you, young debutante calculating hostess, grieving widow, hopeful mother. You pick one up, the ivory brocade with delicate lace from the year of your engagement. You hold it gently, run your fingers along its boning. It still smells faintly of rosewater. There's a strange thing happening these days. More women are choosing not to corset at all. Not just privately, but publicly. Tea gowns are becoming day wear. Looser bodices are passing inspection. Even some dressmakers are quietly omitting waist stays upon request. There's a fringe trend in France. Now soft brassieres made of fabric and tape, meant only to support, not reshape. The first time you hear it described, you blink. Why, you ask aloud. But the better question is, why not? You don't discard your corsets, not yet. You're not ready to be done. But you do hang them with more distance now. You wear them for events, for nostalgia, for photographs. But no longer for breakfast. No longer for garden walks. One evening, you meet a childhood friend for tea. She arrives in a flowing dress with no corset at all. Her waist is rounder, her posture relaxed. You expect to feel judgment or superiority, but instead you feel relief. She laughs freely. She eats heartily. She leans forward when speaking and slouches when tired. She looks real. That night you take your corset off earlier than usual, and you don't hang it up. You fold it gently, as if tucking it away not just for the evening, but for something more permanent. Maybe not forever, but long enough to remember what it feels like to be shaped only by your own choosing. It's 1908 now, and you're beginning to sense that something irreversible is happening not just in fashion, but in the very bones of society. Corsets are still around, of course. They haven't vanished overnight, but they're becoming quieter. Less of a uniform, more of a suggestion. and that suggestion is growing easier to refuse. This morning you stand in front of your dressing mirror, corset in hand. It's still beautiful gray silk with delicate hand stitching along the seams, a fine example of craftsmanship. But it feels almost out of place now, like a relic carried forward too long. You slip into it anyway, out of habit, out of nostalgia, maybe out of fear. But halfway through lacing you pause, and you stop. You call for your maid. Ask her to fetch the new underbodice, the soft cotton one, with just enough structure to flatter, not squeeze. No boning, no steel, just fabric and breath. Historians still argue whether this moment, this soft decline, was sparked more by feminism or function. Some say it was the suffragette movement gaining power. Others claim it was just the changing pace of life, faster, freer, more practical. The truth is likely both. But for you right now, it's neither political nor philosophical. It's personal. You walk outside corset-free for the first time in public today. Not in rebellion, not in statement, just because. The breeze moves differently across your midsection. You sit on a bench without readjusting. You laugh without planning your posture first. At the bakery, a young girl behind the counter eyes your figure and says, "You look so comfortable." You grin. "I am." There's a fringe fashion salon a few streets over selling health corsets, lightweight, flexible, barely there supports, meant for women who ride bicycles or play tennis. You stop in just to browse. The proprietor explains with a twinkle in her eye that they're designed for movement, not molding. You touch the display corset. It's so thin, you can see your fingers through the mesh. You remember learning to dance years ago, your body wrapped in a corset so tight you could barely curtsy. You'd laugh then, breathless, thinking that was just how life would always feel, like beauty earned through discomfort. But now you're not so sure. That evening, you attend a dinner party. Half the women are corseted. The other half are not. And for the first time, no one comments. Not even the older aunts. At one point, you excuse yourself and walk out to the garden. The moon is out, and the night air is cool. You close your eyes and feel the outline of your own ribs beneath your dress, uncompressed, unhidden. You think back to your first corset, the way it made you feel powerful, elegant, invincible. And then the years that followed, where it also made you feel limited, breathless, exposed. It was never just cloth and boning. It was identity, expectation, sometimes armor, sometimes cage. But now it's just a garment. You realize you haven't even hung up today's corset. It's still draped over the chair like a half-finished thought. You smile at the image. You go to bed in a loose cotton shift, free of structure, free of form. You curl into yourself, not perfectly postured, not visually ideal, just you. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. By 1910, you've become something of a quiet observer in the great corset debate. You no longer feel the need to defend your choices at garden parties, nor do you whisper apologies for skipping stays at tea. In truth, most of the women around you are making the same decisions. You've all just stopped talking about it. The corset isn't gone. It's simply no longer sacred. Today you visit a department store in the city. Not just a boutique, but one of the grand new temples of consumerism with velvet staircases and chandeliers that hum with electric light. You're here for gloves, maybe a hat, but what catches your eye is something peculiar in the lingerie department. A mannequin, wearing what looks like a child's camisole, except it's not. It's the brassiere, a French word, the sign says, gaining popularity fast, designed to separate the bust and lift without compression. No waist shaping, no ribs to move, no breath to lose. Historians still argue whether the invention of the bra signaled the death of the corset or if it was just a side effect of a shifting silhouette. But standing there, watching a young girl examine one with giddy interest, you realize this isn't a revolution. It's an evolution, a quiet one. You try one on out of curiosity. There are ribbons to adjust and a few odd snaps, but nothing painful, no lacing, no tug of war, just cotton cups and elastic bands. You move in front of the mirror, and nothing hurts. You laugh aloud, startled by how light you feel. Later that week, your neighbor's daughter rushes over to show you her new dress. No corset needed, she declares with pride, turning in a circle to prove it. Her waist is natural. Her posture is relaxed. She looks like she belongs to the new world. And you find yourself halfway between centuries. There's a drawer in your wardrobe still filled with corsets. Some look impossibly narrow now. Others seem theatrical. You pick up the oldest one, your coming-out corset, pale pink, with pearl buttons, and hold it against your body. It doesn't even come close to closing. You smile. There's a fringe art exhibit opening next month. The female form, fashion, and resistance. Word is, they're displaying a Victorian corset next to a modern bicycle. You think about attending. You think about lending one of your own corsets to the museum. Imagine that something you once wore every single day, now placed behind glass as a curiosity. You wonder how it will be labeled. Instrument of oppression, maybe. Or perhaps symbol of femininity. Or just worn by women for 4 centuries. You're not sure which would be the most accurate. That evening, your granddaughter visits. She crawls into your lap with a book. She's 6, already asking questions. She points to a picture in a magazine, a drawing of a corseted woman from 100 years ago, and says, "Why is her belly so tiny?" You pause. Then you answer honestly, "Because people used to think that made her beautiful." She squints. "Doesn't look very comfortable." You laugh. It wasn't. She returns to the storybook. You stroke her hair, thinking maybe the true legacy of corsets isn't pain or elegance. Maybe it's the reminder of how far we've come and how often we reshape ourselves, not just for beauty, but for belonging. It's 1914 and the world tilts. You wake to the sound of the newspaper hitting the front step, the same as any other morning. But the headline is different this time. One name, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. One word, assassinated. And beneath it, a ripple you can't yet comprehend, but you feel it in your chest like a corset tightening, even though you're not wearing one. War is declared. Troops are mobilized. Men disappear from tea tables and mourning carriages replaced by telegrams and silence. In their absence, women step forward, not just to tend and wait, but to work. You see it all unfolding from your sitting room window, through gossip at the dressmakers, and in the shifting advertisements that now shout patriotism over prettiness. Corsets out, uniforms in, factories shift from silk to steel, and the corset, once the symbol of feminine control, is now seen as wasteful. After all, why stitch 20 bones into a bodice when those same materials could line a soldier's helmet? You remember the feel of whalebone digging into your ribs as you sewed napkins for your wedding trousseau decades ago. Now, young women sew bandages, ammo belts, and khaki smocks, uncorseted sleeves, rolled jaws, set. One day, you're invited to volunteer at a converted textile mill, now producing uniforms. The invitation says, patriotic duty. No previous experience required. You chuckle. No experience. Women have been sewing under pressure for centuries. When you arrive, the room is a sea of cotton chatter and sweat. No one's wearing corsets. No one can. Not with the heat, the pace, the constant lifting and bending. Instead, they wear Liberty bodices, light quilted garments meant to provide just enough shape to be modest and just enough freedom to breathe. You try one. It's odd at first, like being wrapped in practicality. No elegance, no hourglass, but also no pain. And strangely, no shame. Historians still argue whether it was this war or women's suffrage that truly killed the corset. But you watch young girls, your granddaughter among them, walk freely through the streets, shoulders back, waists uncompressed, and realize the corset isn't dying by revolution. It's dissolving in plain sight. You hear whispers of a French designer, Paul Poiret, who's throwing away corsets altogether, replacing them with draped flowing gowns inspired by the East. The scandal, the delight, the freedom. You see one of his designs in a magazine. No boning, no waist cinching, just folds of silk and a hint of rebellion. You trace the outline with your finger, half in awe, half in mourning. It's beautiful, but would it suit you? That night you pull out your own collection of corsets, ivory garnet, dove gray, embroidered plain, stained with perfume or tears. They smell of lavender, sachets, and age. You run your fingers along the ridges of the stays, the careful stitching the places where hooks have rusted just slightly. One corset in particular, your engagement corset, catches your eye. You remember the weight of it, the nerves in your chest, the way it forced your breath shallow, just as you said yes. You wonder, did he fall in love with you, or with the silhouette you were sewn into? You fold it gently, like an old letter from someone you no longer write to, and place it in a box with cedar wood and silence. In the weeks that follow, your wardrobe begins to shift, not dramatically, no sweeping rebellion, no symbolic burning, just small substitutions. You start choosing cotton underdresses instead of stiff petticoats. Camisoles replace corset covers. And yes, sometimes you leave the house in nothing more than a tailored, unstructured bodice beneath your dress. The first time you do, you feel exposed, not indecent, but unguarded. You brace yourself for comments at church, at the grocer's, at bridge club, but none come. And that somehow stings more than any criticism, because for so long the corset was your currency, your armor, your proof of womanhood, discipline, and worth. To realize that no one notices its absence is to confront a truth you'd rather ignore. Maybe it was never about you. Maybe it was always about them. One afternoon, your granddaughter, now a student nurse, brings home a friend from the Red Cross. She's wearing trousers, actual trousers. You nearly spill your tea. I know, shocking, the girl laughs, noticing your stare. But try lifting a stretcher in a skirt. You want to protest, but find you have no words. Just a smile and a pang of jealousy. Later, your granddaughter helps you try on one of the new posturally correct brasiers. It's strange, this soft under thing. Less structure, more shape. You laugh awkwardly as she adjusts the straps. It's like being held by a cloud, she says. You nod. A very well-behaved cloud. The days grow shorter. The war grows longer. And you, like the rest of the world, adapt. Eventually, the corset becomes something spoken of in past tense, a quaint idea, a symbol, like parasols and calling cards. You don't throw yours away, but you no longer reach for them. Instead, you reach for the garden shears, for the newspaper, for your knitting needles, for breath, deep, unhurried, delicious breath. And when you walk through the market unbound and unnoticed, you realize that the corset is still with you in memory, in posture, in muscle memory. But its grip has loosened, and what's left is your own shape, not sculpted, not restricted, simply yours. By 1919, the war is over, but the world is permanently altered, and so are you. Peace treaties are being signed, streets are filling with laughter again, and jazz has started sneaking into respectable parlors. But something else is in the air, something less tangible than music or politics. It's the breath of relief, the full-bodied inhale of women who no longer have to cinch themselves to be taken seriously. You sit on your porch, watching a group of girls stroll past in dropped-waist dresses, stockings, rolled just below the knee, short bobs, swinging like punctuation marks on rebellion. Their laughter is sharp, their eyes direct. They wear rouge in the middle of the day. None of them are corseted. You remember a time when walking down the street like that would have caused a scandal. Now it barely earns a glance. You sip your tea, loose chamomile, no sugar, a small act of modernity, and realize something. You're not scandalized. You're enchanted. The fashion columns call it the new woman. The magazines say she's independent, boyish, bold. The kind of woman who votes and dances and drives and doesn't even own a corset. And while you still wear your hair up and favor modest heels, you feel a quiet kinship with her. After all, you too endured the squeeze, and now you've exhaled. At a neighborhood gathering, someone brings up the disgraceful new styles of Paris and New York. A man you vaguely recognize, probably from church, says, "They're not women anymore, just flimsy little boys in lipstick." You say nothing, but in your head, you think they're not boys. They're finally themselves. Historians still argue whether the flapper era empowered women or simply sexualized them in new packaging. But as you watch your niece tie a headband around her cropped curls, you're reminded of your own mother, gasping for air, in a corset 2 sizes too small. This isn't about fashion, it's about permission. You visit a department store one afternoon with your daughter. She's looking for a chemise and brassiere for an upcoming trip. The corset section still exists barely, tucked away in the back, like an elderly aunt who insists on attending parties but no longer hosts them. You walk past the mannequins with their boned waists and padded hips. One wears a corset labeled the last word in support. You touch the tag gently, then walk on. In the mirror of the fitting room, your daughter turns to admire herself in a light cotton slip. No corset, no fuss. She looks radiant, real. You sit beside her and wonder aloud, what will be the next thing we have to unlearn? She smiles. I hope nothing that tight. Later that week, you attend a small exhibition hosted by the Women's League, a display titled The Changing Form of Freedom. On one end of the room, a 19th century corset sits under a glass dome. On the other end, a flapper dress hangs loose on a wire frame. You walk the distance between the two. Each step feels symbolic, even if no one notices. A fringe artist named Lillian is giving a lecture about the cultural implications of underwear. She uses the phrase architectural control of the body. You scribble it down, unsure whether to agree or roll your eyes. Then she says, for 400 years, women were taught to believe they were only beautiful when restrained. Imagine how powerful we might be now that we can breathe. The room falls quiet. You think of the first time your mother cinched you into a corset, of the bruises, the lightheadedness, the compliments. You also think of the day you stopped wearing one, of how ordinary it felt, how liberatingly boring. That night you dream of your younger self dancing barefoot in a garden wearing nothing but a loose gown that floats around your ankles. There's music, somewhere distant, echoing, and the sky is full of stars. You're not trying to be thin. You're just trying to move. In the morning, you open the cedar trunk one more time, just to look, just to remember. And for the first time in your life, you feel no tug of nostalgia, only a soft certainty. This chapter is closed. You step into the 1920s with cautious optimism. Gone are the wars, at least for now. In their place is a peculiar sort of electricity, parties, radios, phonographs, and change, so much change. It's not just the hemlines creeping upward, or the Charleston sweeping across dance floors. It's the sudden realization that for the first time in centuries, women are dressing for themselves, and not just the young ones. You've noticed something in the mirror lately, not the fine lines around your mouth, or the way your back curves slightly when you forget to straighten up. It's subtler than that. It's the absence of tension, of that automatic awareness of being watched, measured, compared. There's no longer a voice in your head whispering, pull tighter, stand straighter, be smaller. You're simply there. One morning, as you button up a loose-fitting blouse and step into a sensible pair of walking shoes, you realize something wild. You haven't worn a corset in over 2 years, not even for holidays. And what's more, no one's noticed. Or rather, no one's cared. You head to the bakery and pass a shop window, displaying a new line of youth-form brassieres. A sign reads, "Now, with no boning." Below it, a mannequin poses with one arm overhead, torso curved naturally, not stiff, not molded, just human. You pause, then walk on. A neighbor stops you on the street. Mrs. Darnell, always in stiff collars, and the last woman you'd expect to notice subtle revolutions. She leans in, glances at your waist, and says with a smile, "You look comfortable." And you are. At tea that afternoon, a friend confesses she's burned her last corset, not as a statement, just as a decision. "I'd rather wear my age like a shawl," she says, sipping from a cup that clinks gently in her saucer. Something soft and earned. You nod, not because you agree, but because you understand. Historians still argue whether corsets disappeared due to progress or practicality. Some say it was economics elastic and rayon were cheaper than satin and whalebone. Others say it was rebellion. But as you dip a biscuit in your tea, you wonder perhaps the corset faded because women finally got too busy living to keep lacing themselves in. Your granddaughter visits from college. She wears trousers and smokes when she thinks you're not looking. But she also studies biology and argues philosophy and plans to travel abroad alone. She looks at you, really looks, and says, "It's strange to think women used to wear those things every day." You smile. It wasn't strange at the time. She frowns, trying to picture it. Didn't it hurt? You pause. Not because you don't remember the answer, but because you remember all of it. The thrill of transformation, the fainting spells, the compliments, the restrictions. It did, you say. But sometimes the pain felt like proof we were doing it right. She makes a face. That's awful. You shrug. It's what we knew. She doesn't respond. But that night, you hear her typing furiously, purposefully, on her portable typewriter. Later, you see the title of her essay, Inheritance of the Body, A Woman's History in Fabric. You don't say anything, but you keep the page she gives you. You visit a museum on your birthday. There's a new exhibit on fashion and the female form. At the center stands a mannequin in a full Victorian corset. On either side, a medieval kirtle, a flapper dress, a mod mini dress, and a modern suit. A little girl in a yellow cardigan tugs her mother's hand and points at the corset. What's that for? Her mother hesitates, then says, to make women look a certain way. The girl frowns. Did they like it? The mother's answer is soft, unsure. Some did, some didn't. But for a long time they didn't have much choice. You move on slowly. Back home you take out your sewing kit, the same one you've used since girlhood. Inside are needles, buttons, bits of lace. At the bottom, a strip of ribbon, faded blue, once threaded through your favorite corset. You hold it, smooth it, and then, finally, cut it in half. Not out of anger, out of completion. You repurpose the ribbon into bookmarks. One goes into a novel by Virginia Woolf, the other into a cookbook, something practical, something beautiful, like you. The corset, once your daily prison and prized possession, is now a footnote, a whisper. And you, for the first time in decades, are the headline. Time slides forward like a ribbon, unspooling quiet, soft and inevitable. It's the mid-1930s now, and while the corset hasn't disappeared completely, it has been transformed. No longer the rigid, sculpted armor of the Victorian age, it has softened into something sleeker, more invisible. The word foundation garment starts appearing in catalogs as if designers are too polite or too clever to use the word corset anymore. You try on one of these new contraptions one day, a long-line girdle made of rubber and elastic, promising lift tuck and smoothness, without a single bone. It rolls up your thighs like a sausage casing and makes a squelching sound when you sit. You hate it. You also admire it, because underneath the discomfort is the ghost of a promise. Maybe eventually women won't have to wear anything just to feel correct. Your daughter buys one and declares it a miracle. She has 3 children and a part-time job and still wants to look neat. She tells you the girdle helps her keep everything where it's meant to be. You want to tell her that everything is already where it's meant to be, but instead you nod, because you understand the habit of shaping oneself for others. It's a muscle that takes a lifetime to unclench. One morning, while folding laundry, you overhear a radio ad. A chipper voice sings, "Smooth your curves and seize the day with magic. Flex, you're on your way." You snort into your coffee. The jingle is catchy, though, and annoying, like a corset in musical form. Historians still argue whether these modern undergarments were liberation or just innovation in disguise. The marketing says comfort. The stitching says compression. But the women are changing. Your neighbor hosts a bridge club where every lady wears slacks, actual slacks. No corsets, no petticoats, just high-waisted, wide-legged trousers and blouses tucked in without apology. You try it once in private. The slacks are roomy and strange and vaguely scandalous. You look in the mirror, expecting to see someone foreign, but there you are, upright, grinning free. Later, you wear them to the market. The world doesn't end. In fact, someone compliments your scarf. You notice something else too. Posture. Years of wearing corsets have made your back automatically straight. When you sit, you do so gracefully. When you rise, it's with precision. The training never really leaves. But now it belongs to you, not the garment. And that's the difference. You attend a local talk at the Women's Guild titled Elegance Without Pain. A French designer, tall, angular, draped in linen, clicks through slides of undergarments from every era. When he reaches the 1870s, he says this is when fashion asked women to suffer in silence. And then, with a flick of the wrist, he shows a brassiere from 1937 and says, "This is when women began whispering back." The room chuckles. You do too. But that night, as you unhook your soft cotton bandeau and rub lotion into your shoulders, you think about how long women have been whispering, how long you have been. Whispers in dressing rooms, whispers in bathrooms, whispers behind fans. Does this make me look smaller? Can you breathe? It's fine, I'm used to it. What changes now, perhaps, is volume. You meet a young woman at the park, your neighbor's niece, who wears no shaping garments at all. She tells you she thinks underwear is a scam, that women should let their bodies be as they are. She stands with her arms crossed, not out of defiance, but comfort. You admire her. You envy her. You are her 30 years and 3 ribs ago. So you invite her for tea. She brings books, Simone de Beauvoir, Virginia Woolf, some woman named Amelia, who flies planes. Over biscuits, she tells you every generation takes a breath and then passes it on. I think you all passed us space. You nearly cry. Because all those years of tugging, lacing, gasping, and adjusting suddenly feel like currency, not just loss. You gave her the space she lives in now, and she gives you something to forgiveness, not just for wearing the corset, but for believing it was the only way to be loved. Later, as you watch her bike away, hair loose, shirt fluttering, you realize something final, something full. You are no longer shaped by your corset. You have outlived it. By the time the 1940s arrive, corsets have retreated almost entirely into history books and attics. And you have outpaced them. You're in your 60s now. Your mornings begin with light stretching and sensible shoes. Your wardrobe contains no boning, no stays, no laces, only soft cotton rayon and a few tailored jackets you like to wear when you're feeling sharp. You still stand tall, not because anything forces you to, but because your body remembers how. Wartime returns yet again, dragging ration cards and factory whistles with it. Young women flood into jobs once reserved for men, and clothing adapts shorter skirts, broader shoulders, minimal frill. Function becomes fashion. And under it all, simple underthings. You overhear your granddaughter joke, "Granny used to wear a steel cage." Can you imagine? You could correct her. It wasn't steel, at least not always. Whalebone mostly. A little canvas. A lot of will. But instead you just smile. You no longer need to explain yourself. On Sundays you walk through the park, passing mothers pushing strollers, teenage girls roller skating in culottes, and soldiers kissing sweethearts who wear trousers and lipstick with equal flair. No corsets in sight, not even in the department store windows. Historians still argue whether this was progress or simply a different form of constraint. After all, the 1940s bring their own version of the ideal shape, hourglass figures aided not by corsets, but by clever tailoring bullet bras and subtle padding. The pressure remains, just redistributed. But you know better now. You've worn the cage, you've discarded the cage, and you've learned to spot it in all its clever disguises. You attend a wedding, your neighbor's youngest, and for the first time in decades, you dance freely. No tugging, no pinching. Your dress sways without restriction, and your breath moves easily in and out of your chest, like it's meant to. Halfway through the reception, someone compliments your posture. Again, you smile. Old habit. You still keep the trunk. It lives in the attic now, beneath old linens and photographs. You haven't opened it in years, but you know exactly what's inside. Not just corsets, but memories. One rainy afternoon, your youngest granddaughter asks if she can see the dresses you wore when you were young and dramatic. You lead her upstairs, open the lid, and reveal a tiny time capsule. She pulls out a corset, runs her fingers along the boning, and laughs. "You actually wore this?" You nod. Every day, you nod again. She holds it up against her torso. It's like a punishment device. You chuckle. It was a promise device, too. She tilts her head. "A promise of what you pause, that I would be beautiful enough, good enough, contained enough." She lowers it, but you were already all those things. You touch her cheek. "I didn't always know that." She folds the corset gently and places it back in the trunk. "Well, now I do, and I won't wear anything that makes me forget." That night you lie in bed, the sound of distant thunder wrapping around the house like a lullaby. You think of how many years you spent tightening, adjusting, apologizing. You think of all the ways the world told you to fit in and how hard you worked to do so. And yet here you are, breathing, loved, loosened. There's a kind of poetry in it, isn't there? To have been shaped and then to reshape yourself. To have worn a cage, then outgrown it. Not in size, but in soul. The next morning you wake up and stretch your arms over your head. Your bones crack softly like applause. You dress slowly, choosing fabrics that make you feel like water fluid, real, uncontained. And before heading downstairs, you glance at your reflection, still upright, still radiant, still entirely your own. The 1950s arrive in a swirl of optimism and upholstery. Everything is lacquered, polished, and pressed, hair kitchen counters, and yes, women's silhouettes. You step into this new decade as if walking onto a stage set, pastel walls, chrome appliances, and radio jingles chirping about the American dream. But beneath the surface, shine, the script feels familiar. You watch the fashion pages unfold with eerie déjà vu. There it is again, the nipped waist, the full hips, the lifted bust line. Christian Dior's new look is everywhere, celebrated for its femininity, praised for bringing back beauty. But you've lived long enough to know what that beauty costs. So you watch carefully. Young women parade through the streets with skirts that swish like bell-shaped flowers. Underneath they wear girdles, elasticized, rubberized, more forgiving than corsets perhaps, but still pulling, still shaping. You try one on in a department store, mostly out of curiosity. The salesgirl gushes, "Isn't it liberating not to need laces anymore?" You smile politely, but inside you feel the same constriction creeping in. It's not liberating. It's just new. Historians still argue whether the post-war return to hyper-femininity was a backlash to the freedom women had tasted during the war, when they wore coveralls and worked machines. Some say this was comfort, a visual return to normal. Others whisper that it was control, rewrapped in a bow. You see it all too clearly. Your daughter now, a young mother herself, begins her mornings smoothing nylons, clipping garters, fastening girdles, and applying a perfect red lip before cooking breakfast. She tells you she wants to look put together. She says it like a prayer. You watch her adjusting the hem of her dress in the mirror and remember doing the same decades earlier with a tighter bodice and less oxygen. Sometimes you want to grab her hands and say, "Stop. You are already enough." But you also know she has to walk her own journey through seams and self-worth. Still, you leave small breadcrumbs. One afternoon, you offer to babysit while she shops for a new dress. After she leaves, you find your granddaughter playing in the garden, mud streaked on her overalls, curls sticking out in every direction, wild and free. You don't correct her. You let her roll in the grass. You join her. That night, while giving her a bath, she asks Grandma, "Why do people wear tight clothes?" You pause. "To look nice." She frowns. "I like soft clothes." You smile. "Me too." Meanwhile, TV commercials chirp at you with perfect posture. For the girl with grace in every place. Flexi form shapes your day. You snort tea out your nose the first time you hear it. But the jingle lingers because it's not just clothes, it's culture. It's the neighbor across the street who wears lipstick to check the mail. It's the magazine articles advising women how to slim down just in time for his return from work. It's the way the word comfortable is often used as a coded insult. She's nice, but she dresses so comfortably, meaning she let go, meaning she gave up. You begin to resist, not loudly, not rebelliously, but in quiet ways. You start wearing looser dresses, ones that float, that breathe. You let your hair go a little silver at the temples. You trade pointed bras for soft cups, and you feel something shift. It's not dramatic, it's not political, it's just ease. Your neighbor Ruth visits for coffee. She compliments your house dress and says, "You always look so at peace." You shrug. "I stopped worrying about my waistline." She leans in. "Tell me your secret." You grin. Eat cake. Sit straight. Breathe deep. Ruth laughs so hard she nearly drops her teacup. Later that week, your daughter confesses she hates wearing her girdle to church. "But if I don't wear it, I feel exposed," she says. You reach across the table and gently press your hand over hers. That's how they keep us in them. She doesn't answer, but you notice she skips the girdle the following Sunday. You don't say a word, but your heart does a little pirouette in your chest. At the beauty salon, the radio plays non-stop fashion tips. A cinched waist makes a woman feel more secure. You roll your eyes and whisper, "No, it makes her feel dizzy." No one hears, except the young hairdresser. She winks. One day, your granddaughter finds an old corset in a trunk. She holds it up like an artifact. "You actually wore this." You nod. Was it like torture? You take the garment gently. It was normal. Would you ever wear one again? You shake your head. "I've learned to breathe." She stares at it thoughtfully. It's kind of pretty, but also it looks like it's trying to hide something. You kiss her forehead. Smart girl. That evening, you take the corset and lay it flat in a shadow box. You place a note beneath it. "To the women who came before me and the ones who came after, may you always choose comfort over cages." You hang it by your reading chair. When guests visit, some laugh. Others ask questions. A few grow quiet. Each reaction feels like a step forward. Sometimes after dinner, you sit by the window, tea in hand, and watch the silhouettes moving past your house. Some tightly wound, others flowing free. You don't judge. You remember. You remember being 16 and tightening laces until your breath came in teaspoons. You remember being 30 and whispering through gritted teeth, "It's fine, I'm used to it." You remember being 40 and thinking, "Maybe this is just how it is." And now, here in the soft hush of evening, you remember that none of it was ever about beauty. It was about control. And now you've chosen to release it, one exhale at a time. Your corset didn't just shape your body, it shaped your story. But now you are the author. And in this chapter, you choose softness. The 1960s don't arrive quietly. They burst in like someone threw open the window and let in all the air the past century tried to lace out of you. You're older now, your hands more wrinkled, your steps more measured, but your mind, oh, it's more alive than ever. You see the city shift, and you feel something stirring beneath the sidewalks. Young people are protesting, marching, singing, questioning. And women, so many women, are burning things. Bras, yes, but also scripts. They're refusing more than fabric. They're refusing shame. You sit on the park bench and watch a young woman in jeans and a t-shirt toss her long hair over one shoulder and laugh with her whole face. No girdle, no underwire, no corset-shaped shadow trailing behind her. She walks like she owns the very ground. You feel no jealousy, just awe. Back home you read about second-wave feminism. Simone de Beauvoir, Betty Friedan. You never read their books in your 20s. No one handed them to you. But now you read them like love letters that somehow arrived 60 years late. And in them, you see yourself, hidden between the lines. You also see a great argument unfolding. Historians still debate whether women truly abandoned all beauty rituals in the 60s or simply reshaped them to suit new expectations. The miniskirt, the twiggy thin silhouette, some say these were new cages cleverly disguised. Others insist it was liberation in motion. You don't need a firm answer. You've lived enough to know truth rarely comes laced tight. But one thing is clear. Girls aren't being told, tighten this to be loved. Not anymore. Your granddaughter, 16, now borrows your old denim jacket and pins a button to the lapel. My body, my rules. She says it with a smile, but you see the steel in her spine. Not the boned kind, the real kind. You remember your first corset. She'll never wear one. And that is a victory. Even if, in this strange circular world, fashion one day swings back again, at least now the choice will be hers. And when she chooses comfort, she won't be alone. You once thought the most radical thing a woman could do was breathe freely. Now you know it's to love herself exactly as she is. Unshaped, unsqueezed, unsilenced. And you're proud. So deeply bone-deep proud. As you fold a cardigan over your shoulders and step into the evening air, you let out a long, slow breath, the kind you once couldn't afford in your corset years. You walk slowly past shop windows lined with mannequins. Some wear tight dresses. Others wear nothing at all, just a painted-on grin. You nod to them like old ghosts. But now you are free. No one is pulling the strings. No one is measuring your worth by inches. You are soft and sure and deeply, powerfully alive. Your story, stitched with threads of resistance and grace, will outlast any trend. And in the quiet of your room before the lights go out, you say aloud one final thought, not to anyone in particular, but to every woman who's ever drawn breath through ribs, constrained. We made it. And now, dear listener, you've walked the full circle from the first tight laces of ancient Egypt to the last slow breath of modern freedom. You've worn the whalebone, and the wire heard the hush of silk skirts and felt the snap of elastic tugging at the illusion of perfection. It's a lot to carry, isn't it? Generations of shaping and silencing whispered rules about what makes you worthy. But now you can put it down. Now you can rest. Let the hum of the fan soften into the background. Let your shoulders sink just a little deeper into the bed. No one needs you to perform or pose or adjust your posture tonight. You're allowed to just be. Maybe you imagine yourself now in a linen robe, feet bare against cool wood floors, a window cracked open to the sound of rustling trees. Or maybe you picture yourself in a field under a soft sky, walking freely, hips swaying to your own rhythm. Wherever you are, whatever you're wearing, if anything at all, know this: your body is not a costume. It is your home, and it has carried you through history. So close your eyes now. Breathe in, slowly, deeply, and as you exhale, let go of every pin clasp and expectation that ever told you how to be. Tonight you are unbound. Tonight you are free. Good night. The 1960s don't arrive quietly. They burst in like someone threw open the window and let in all the air the past century tried to lace out of you. You're older now, your hands more wrinkled, your steps more measured, but your mind, oh, it's more alive than ever. You see the city shift, and you feel something stirring beneath the sidewalks. Young people are protesting, marching, singing, questioning, and women, so many women are burning things, bras, yes, but also scripts. They're refusing more than fabric. They're refusing shame. You sit on the park bench and watch a young woman in jeans and a t-shirt toss her long hair over one shoulder and laugh with her whole face. No girdle, no underwire, no corset-shaped shadow trailing behind her. She walks like she owns the very ground. You feel no jealousy, just awe. Back home you read about second-wave feminism, Simone de Beauvoir, Betty Friedan. You never read their books in your 20s. No one handed them to you. But now you read them like love letters that somehow arrived 60 years late. And in them you see yourself, hidden between the lines. You also see a great argument unfolding. Historians still debate whether women truly abandoned all beauty rituals in the 60s or simply reshaped them to suit new expectations. The miniskirt, the twiggy thin silhouette, some say these were new cages cleverly disguised. Others insist it was liberation in motion. You don't need a firm answer. You've lived enough to know truth rarely comes laced tight. But one thing is clear: girls aren't being told, tighten this to be loved. Not anymore. Your granddaughter, 16, now borrows your old denim jacket and pins a button to the lapel. My body, my rules. She says it with a smile, but you see the steel in her spine. Not the boned kind, the real kind. You remember your first corset. She'll never wear one, and that is a victory. Even if in this strange circular world, fashion one day swings back again, at least now the choice will be hers. And when she chooses comfort, she won't be alone. You once thought the most radical thing a woman could do was breathe freely. Now you know it's to love herself exactly as she is. Unshaped, unsqueezed, unsilenced. And you're proud, so deeply, bone deep proud. As you fold a cardigan over your shoulders and step into the evening air, you let out a long, slow breath, the kind you once couldn't afford in your corset years. You walk slowly past shop windows lined with mannequins. Some wear tight dresses. Others wear nothing at all, just a painted-on grin. You nod to them like old ghosts. But now you are free. No one is pulling the strings. No one is measuring your worth by inches. You are soft and sure and deeply, powerfully alive. Your story, stitched with threads of resistance and grace, will outlast any trend. And in the quiet of your room, before the lights go out, you say aloud one final thought, not to anyone in particular, but to every woman who's ever drawn breath through ribs constrained. We made it.